Hi, everyone, and we'll continue our study of microeconomics. And today we jump into one of section of lectures, a big part of microeconomics, and in a way, half of microeconomics, which is economics of household or economics of demand. So we study the market, we know there's demand and supply. In other language or another side, there are consumers or household or people, and there are suppliers, companies, producers. So microeconomics is divided into these two groups and studies how people behave, how consumers behave, and then how companies behave and what we have in there. So we start a set of lectures about how people behave. And front and center, to understand how at least we think people behave, we need to introduce a concept, what's called rational economic agent. So in simple words, economics believes that people on the market, at least at the market where they make financial decisions, they act rationally. And because of that, we can understand and have certain rules and economic policies and in general certain outcomes. Because if we just act, randomly or whatever, everyone does what they want, that wouldn't really result in any science, right? So we have this idea of rational economic agent. We have some problems with it that I'm going to talk about as well, but to a large extent, with money, when we make economic decisions, we are more or less rational. And we start with understanding what is rationality. Because unlike our common language, where we use the word rational pretty much as synonymous to thought through, and irrational as synonymous to emotional, that's not really a scientific definition. Rationality is defined mathematically. And so you need to understand what is rational in economics, scientific rationality, and to be able to define what action is rational and what action is irrational. It is very important because, as I just explained, rational actions could be predicted, could be scientifically explained, and we can optimize and achieve certain good estimated result from our economic activity. If we act irrationally, doesn't mean always bad. We're actually going to study where we have to act irrationally to achieve good outcome, basically. There is no other way, which is very interesting particular case. But in general, we start with simple one. Simple one, we need to understand what is rationality. Rationality is defined through three axioms of von Neumann-Morgenstern. So axiom, if you remember from high school, is a statement that doesn't need any proof. It's just taken for granted. It's sort of a definition. So basically everything that satisfies all three of these axioms, any action, is rational. That's what you need to know. So you need to know that the axioms themselves and need to understand what they mean also. Because they're quite mathematical or rather logical, scientific, but they also have a pretty realistic meaning, and that's what you need to know, to get from it. First, completeness. Completeness means that between any choices, you can always make a choice. So that's kind of straight out from the beginning. That's not that easy. You can think how often you find yourself unable to make decision just to, like, I don't know, iPhone or Galaxy or Google phone, and you sit and you think and you cannot make a decision. Well, that's irrational. Rational person can always make a choice if he or she presented with an alternatives, and the alternatives there come kind of with information, with prices in market terms, prices and quality, and a rational person always can make a decision. So A is better than B, or B is better than A, or A is equal to B. Then it's sort of indifferent, but it's also a decision. It means literally financially indifferent. And so if, let's say you're indifferent between Galaxy S22 and the latest iPhone, if they both cost the same. This means if one of the phones will go down $50, you would prefer that one. That's still a choice. So completeness, in simple terms, means you can always make a choice. If you cannot make a choice straight out, whatever happens after that, and you're going to have exams and problems into that, like you're going to have a case and you need to be able to tell if the behavior is rational or not. So if someone cannot make an economic decision, that's not rational, straight out in the beginning. Whatever happens next, that's irrational. So you have to make a decision, completeness. Then we have transitivity. So transitivity means, as is shown there, if A is better than B and B is better than C, then automatically, no matter what, A is always better than C. So you present it, so as we're gonna talk about problems with this rational economic agent, a lot of them came in the recent 20 years from psychology. So psychologists run a lot of tests about consumer behavior, and they figure out that even though it's very logical, right? A is better than B. Bananas are better than apples. You present it with a banana and an apple, and you say, I like banana, banana is better than apple. Then you present it with apple and orange, and you say, I think apple is better than orange. Then by transitivity, banana should be better than orange as well. Well, you present it with banana versus orange, and people choose orange. And then they ask why they do that, and they don't know. And so on. So people, their real market behavior is very often not rational. They cannot decide. With completeness, they also change their mind. And that's even like if when you cannot decide, you can, with completeness, we can drag that most our decisions are made without full information. So our kind of fear of decision comes from the fact that, let's say you buy a phone, same example. You need to know about your future use, and maybe you're afraid whether something happens in future, something unknown, and that would change this choice. So with making decisions, at least there is an explanation that comes from the fact that we don't know future, and most of our decisions in some ways affect our future. So that's a link, even though still economics, scientifically, you will act rationally if you make a decision. And we assume that at least on the market, you know quite enough to make that decision. Nevertheless, it's a bit better explanation why people are afraid to make a choice rather than why they change their mind. It doesn't make any sense, but it's very, very common. Maybe you can find an explanation. That would be great. And yeah, so rational, if A is better than B and B is better than C, then A automatically is better than C. It also implies actually 2 and 3. So axiom of transitivity and the third one, axiom of independence. They implies one simple thing. You cannot change your mind. If you prefer something to something in economic setting, again, you cannot change your mind. And that's a big problem, right? Because we change our mind all the time. When we make consumer decisions, we change our mind. Yes, you can change your mind if, let's say, the price is changing, because that would be rational. That's sort of the system we work with. And that's what we study. We study the market, the prices, and the quantities. And that's neoclassical economics. It's only focus on this: prices, quantities, rational decision making. So in this setting, you can change your mind if the price changes. obviously. Maybe you can change your mind if there is a news of like shortage on quantity, for example. That's also quite rational, and that's what they want basically. That's why we set such tight standards so we can understand how people make these decisions when price is changing. However, people change their mind all the time. Price is the same. You go to a store and you buy vanilla ice cream. Let's say all ice cream costs the same. You go to a store, you buy today vanilla. You go in 2 days, you buy strawberry. Why? You prefer vanilla over strawberry. Now you buy strawberry. Why? Price the same, quantity the same, nothing changed within the market, and yet you made another decision. Well, that's irrational. And that's very, and again, everything irrational, it just makes very hard for market to operate, for economics to operate. Because when we say, well, if you always choose, let's say, vanilla, then the market can adjust. Okay, vanilla, you choose vanilla, more people choose vanilla, then it should be more expensive if even the costs are the same. So it's a communication technique that we are learning between consumers and producers, supply and demand. That's how markets become efficient. However, if you today choose vanilla and tomorrow you choose strawberry without any being constant in your choice, then you don't send any message, and it's not scientific. Basically, doesn't mean it's wrong. Again, doesn't mean it's bad. Very often in our common language, something irrational is perceived as not good or not smart. That is not the case. You can, in reality, right? You can choose vanilla and you can choose strawberry. Doesn't mean you're stupid. Doesn't mean you do something bad. Just, that's how it is. You change your taste. However, it is irrational. So we need to overcome this kind of common language definition of rational versus irrational and accept a scientific definition. Irrational scientifically could be good, could be intelligent. In fact, we're going to learn that game theory where irrational behavior is sort of the highest level, the most intelligence and the best one that can possibly result in the best outcome. Nevertheless, rational behavior allows this forecasting and sort of clear understanding what you want, right? If you choose always vanilla, you communicate to another side of the market that you like vanilla over strawberry. If you change your mind like that, you don't communicate anything clear. And for science, it's a problem. So independence, quite similar to transitivity, but a little different setting. But it's always also about changing your mind. Independence means if you have banana and apple, right? And you like banana over apple, if you have banana plus orange versus apple plus orange, you will still take banana plus orange because you like banana more than apple. And you just add oranges to two sides. So mathematically, it makes total sense. If you assign, let's say, as we're going to do actually, internal prices, like your personal price, to a banana and an apple, right? And banana for you is valued $3. An apple is valued $2. That's why you prefer banana, because it's $3. Now, you value orange at $1, but you add it to both sides. So now you have on one side value 4, on the other side value 3. You like 4 more. So mathematically, totally makes sense. In reality, we also change this mind, and that kind of bugs psychologists even more, because in transitivity, very often there is a time period, right? Today you choose vanilla, and tomorrow, yesterday you choose vanilla, today you choose strawberry. So there is some passage of time, and that kind of why you change your mind. So you have some time. In independence, it's even more confusing because quite often there is a very short period of time, right? You were offered banana and apple, you made your choice, straight like the next second you offered another choice and you switch. Hard to understand. Sometimes there is a rational nonlinear synergy, which could be explained if you're offered, let's say, a left shoe that is really good. Like you really like that shoe, but you offered only a left shoe. And on the other, you offered like a pair of pretty bad shoes. And then if you add obviously a right shoe from the first pair, then a pair of bad shoes and a right shoe doesn't make any sense. But a pair of left and right shoes that are really good makes sense. So there is a particular set of goods that we call complementary, where it completely makes sense. However, that's a bit, next level type of problem. If in this case, rational means that all the products are complete and they're independent, like apple and banana, you don't really want the mix of them. They are not mixable, let's say. And so you are not choosing them because you want to make a smoothie. You are just change your mind again. So basically, always make a decision, never change your mind. And that's rationality. So I like questions about morality. Very often when economists, and that's partly problems with textbooks, economists are pushed to make a judgment on moral stand, and somehow they make it irrational. Well, technically, it's not true, because let's say, is believing in God rational, scientifically rational? It is. If you can always, and let's say you follow don't steal, okay? Don't steal because you're Christian, you decide I'm not going to steal. And there is an opportunity to steal something. And let's say you cannot be caught, for the sake of example. No one is seeing that, there is just no way you can be caught. And you decide not to steal. It's still rational because you're constantly following this set of beliefs, any set of beliefs. If you believe constantly, if you are not changing your mind, oh, today, I don't steal, but now I can steal because no, I'm not going to jail. That is not, that's irrational, right? That's not really rational action, but it's also not good, obviously. But for the sake of rationality, it's very important to understand a lot of things that are perceived as irrational, trying to undermine them just because they're morally justified, are actually rational. If you're constant and persistent in your set of beliefs, it's rational. You make your choice, you stick with your choice, it is rational. What's irrational is changing your choice or not being able to decide. Again, in life, obviously, very often we cannot decide, but we are in economics. We are mostly talking in you going to Costco or Walmart and making decisions what to buy. So in that setting, it's not that kind of hard demand for you to be able to decide what you want. Otherwise, it's very hard to keep on going with science here, right? If we're talking about science and how we can make things better, at least you should be able to make decisions. So that is rational. And yeah, hopefully you got this. Now, that is called neoclassical utility setup, a neoclassical setup of economy of household. It's based on rational economic agent, but also on some other assumptions that are even quite problematic, as we're going to go through them. By the way, economic agent is just a general term for companies, people, families, corporations, governments. So all of them combined are called agents. It's just a word that could unite in one group, people and companies and government as well. So everyone is an agent in economics. They have decision-making power, effectively. Everyone who makes a decision is an agent. A child is not an agent because parents make decisions for a child. So that's why mostly, on this side, we call it economics of household, because we consider family, or rather economic family. Again, if you, let's say, have brothers and sisters, and they're all, over 18 or over 21, depending on what decision you make, they are separate from you. Even though you're family, economically, they make their own decision. They have probably their own income, and it's not economic agent. Economic agent is that type of household, is that type that has sort of united budget. So usually parents, kids, underage kids, and sometimes senior grandparents, if they need to be taken care of, they are also part of the household. And so one budget, one decision making, group decision making, whoever makes decision, but one budget, one financial system. That's a household. And on this side of economy or market, we talk about household mostly. We don't talk about people. I use it sometimes, it's interchangeably, but keep in mind that over lifetime, we are mostly household, right? When we are kids, we don't make decisions, parents make for us. Then you grow. There is a period probably right now where you're more or less independent and you are your own household. And then you get married, and you have a combined with your partner household, and then you have kids. If you choose to do so, then you will have a bit more people in your household, one budget, one decision-making process. And yeah, so that's some language you need to understand. So what are the other assumptions? Utility. Utility is an important term, which we're going to learn a little later, but basically it represents your internal value, which you will then compare to the market value. Market value is obvious. You go to Costco, you see the prices, that's the market value. It's the same for everybody. It's there. Utility represents your personal value. And as we're going to learn pretty much right today or a couple days later, whenever you choose, is that we make decisions in economic setting on the market by comparing utility to the price. So let's say, again, go to Costco, buy coffee, and I see, well, I value, let's say, 2-pound, 3-pound bag of coffee at $20, good coffee, and the price is $12. So I'm going to buy it because it gives me, I pay $12, but I get value of $20. And there are three terms that are quite kind of related to the same thing: value, utility, and price. And they kind of relate to the same thing, right? You have a bag of coffee and it's sort of value, utility, and price is same idea, but different agency, right? Value we use as a more deeper philosophical concept. And we're going to talk a lot about value in this class. Not a lot, but we're going to talk about value, because value of bag of coffee is not even monetary. If I ask you what's the value of bag of coffee, if you like coffee, or if you don't like, same, you can think of very different things. It brings you joy. Well, at least me, it brings a lot of joy. It brings maybe, thoughts. If this coffee is, let's say, from Hawaii, where I lived for a while, I like Hawaiian coffee. It brings a lot of joy just knowing it's there and the smell. So the value is not monetary for the most part. It could be monetary, but when the concept of value in economics, when you say what's the value of something, we imply not only monetary value, we imply deep understanding what's the value of it. Maybe, I just bought coffee also from Michigan, and it was written how sort of socially conscious the farm is, and that they pay very well to farmers who farm coffee, and they want sustainability and all these things. That's value. That bag of coffee represents all these things. By buying it, and it's a bit more expensive than Starbucks bag of coffee. So by buying that coffee and paying a bit more, I got different type of value. I help farmers, I feel better. All that is non-monetary value, and that's the concept of value. Utility, as expressed here, is value that we can represent in money. If I ask you but you're personal, right? If I ask you, here's a cup, here's a cup. What's the value of this cup for you? If I offered you a cup, maybe zero, because you don't need a cup. Maybe it was like, what I'm going to do with this cup? I don't need it. Zero. So utility is pretty much how much would you pay for this cup in dollars. It's not value. Value, philosophical. Utility, downgraded term, how much would you pay for this cup personally? Now, the cup costs $4, something. That's the market price. So the market price is the final, that's an aggregated utility, as you can imagine, where the market price comes from. Again, in a normal sort of competitive market, not like fixed market where one side just decided the price. In a competitive market, the price comes from, they ask everybody in this country how much they would pay for this cup. Then they look how many cups they want to sell. They figure out the math behind it, and they put $4 a price. And that's how it is. But utility, it's your personal. It doesn't mean it should be $4. Maybe it's zero, maybe it's one, maybe it's 10. It's up to you. And as we're going to learn, we make decisions in this simplified way by comparing our utility to the market price. And then it becomes very simple. If the market price is 4 and utility for you is more than 4, it allows you to give away $4 to get higher utility effectively. Utility of money, as you can mathematically guess, utility of $4 is $4. So if utility of something is less than its monetary value, than its price, then you don't buy it because you value money more. Money has value 1 to 1. Now, if utility of the product is higher, you buy it. So quite useful concept, and utility is extremely important. It's probably in this setting, it's definitely the most useful concept. Because again, rational, irrational, it's more philosophical, it's very fun, but it's not that useful to define whether something is rational or irrational, at least at your level. If you go to like some days to be a strategist for business company and figure out how to launch new products and doing some really sophisticated things, understanding rationality is very important. But for you as just consumer, it is quite easy term, and the most useful term is this decision-making tool. Utility, how much would you pay for it? Or how much would you get it? How much would you get from a particular good? And the market price is, objectively, the market offers you on this price. By comparison, the two, you make financial and economic decisions. That's how simple it is. And we're going to actually have examples of that. Now, this assumption has problems because while the easiest way, where this economics works, in Costco, Walmart, because their prices, they're mostly competitive and mostly you're presented with products that you have some idea of what the product is and how much it's worth for you, what is utility and things like this. If you go to a hospital and you're not a doctor, you are facing a very problematic situation. Not like you go to Costco, you have no idea. Let's say you have a health, God forbid, but you have a health problem. Or somebody has and you accommodate them to a hospital. You don't know, you're not aware of any, anything about the problem and what's the solution is there. And your utility lies not in drugs. Your utility is to get healthy, and the utility obviously is quite high. We all want to be healthy. So in that case, you can see how problematic everything becomes, because it's very hard to monetize how would you get healthy? Because you are not buying health, you're buying drugs, you're buying some medications. And maybe there is an alternative, right? One medication doctor says, well, this would make you pretty good healthy, and the other one that costs 100 times more will make you absolutely healthy. Maybe not. Everything is uncertain. But let's say, even if we simplify, it's still a very difficult choice that is inverted, because we don't want to go to a hospital. We want to be healthy. That's where our utility. We don't value drugs. We don't want to value drugs. And yet we have to make those decisions too. So utility of everything measured in money could become a big problem. And it's a bigger problem when we make decisions related to environment, for example. How much clean ocean is worth? How much drinking water without lead is worth? How much would you pay for that? Probably a lot. But you also assume that water has no lead, then you don't pay a lot. So again, Costco, Walmart, that's how neoclassical economics think everything is, and that's why it's perfect for this. Almost any example that is from a store works perfectly with all this setting that we are studying. The moment you go to a little more complicated things, you go to hospital, you are facing a problem to support national parks with additional tax or additional contribution that you make or not. That's not very easy. And so there are challenges with this assumption. Now, one of the most criticized, so you can imagine this neoclassical, as you hopefully remember from history, we got neoclassical school dominating the world of economics and science, and was pretty much the only option until 2008, when, because of all these settings, because economics created like that, collapsed massively, and we start rethinking maybe some things are not that good. And it goes to very basic things like assumptions. And one of the key assumptions is self-interest, that everybody cares only about themselves, economic well-being only of themselves. That is a very, well, first, again, economics today, in today's world, there, and by the way, I wanted to tell you, I don't know if you were told before, if you took my class 161, you knew that, but most of you didn't. And even if you take 161 already with somebody else, you might not hear that, because it's a new thing we introduced to this course, where we kind of present you with different programs, right? And what's the difference between, let's say, finance and management and economics? Well, economics is pretty much the only science in all business school. The other science that is applicable to business school is psychology. So psychology, economics are the only science. And so those programs ask kind of big questions. They're harder in some ways. They're not that down to earth, like, let's say, accounting. It's a very practical degree. You study accounting, either you work in accounting or you work in a company doing finance and some sort of corporate finance management, possible too, with accounting degree, but it's very down to earth. It doesn't ask you a big question. Economics is a science. Psychology is a science. They ask very big questions: how we think, how we make decisions, what's wrong with our world, and how to make it better. All these, if you study accounting, you will never reach that. So that's why we want to encourage you to combine programs. So let's say you want to be an accountant, but having a minor in economics is a great idea to expand a little bit on a science level, or minor in psychology as well. Even though it's outside business, that would be a bit of a challenge for you regarding curriculum, but it's quite fun. When I was your age, I actually studied enough psychology to get even a major in psychology, but because of curriculum, I didn't get it officially. but I loved it. It's very interesting to look into human mind. So in today's economics, as a science, we have kind of this neoclassical, we have this alternative economics or heterodox economic or Keynesian economics of 21st century. But we also have psychology, and a lot of new things came from psychology. And one of them, that self-interest is a very strange idea. We as social beings are not self-interest. And building our economic system from self-interest is quite dangerous. And it started, people like to quote Adam Smith from that. And Adam Smith, as I already explained, Adam Smith lived in a different world where economic system was top down. It was coming from effectively government, but mostly like king or emperor, whoever it was. And it was landlords controlling land and everyone working on the land without any sort of moving forward, any kind of self-interest kind of preservation, basically, and survival. And in that, Adam Smith thought, so when the industrialization appeared and Adam Smith was there, he thought, well, if we allow people to make decisions, their self-interest is helpful because they want to succeed, and so they will produce better products. And he was saying that a baker makes good bread not because he's kind, but because he wants his bakery to succeed, to make money. And so it's his self-interest that sort of supports the system. And in that, it's still true, but it only true on kind of that level. If we start talking on a really and we quite developed quite a bit since that time. So today's economy is very different. And what we need to understand that there are about 10, even more than 10 times more people on this planet than when Adam Smith was there. So back then, technology obviously is different. Back then, if our self-interest result in some negative environmental output or a negative even human sacrifice or whatever negative impact we could create with that technology was very, very mild. And as well as positive, right? We didn't really jump anywhere. But today, every mistake that we figure out wrong, because there are almost 8 billion people, because technology is extremely powerful, we consume a lot of things. If we made a wrong decision and a lot of people make the same decision, we produce a lot of what's negative externality. We produce damage to our planet and our economic system too. So a simple mistake is not that simple anymore. Yes, we have a lot of, it's kind of, you can see a little kind of God's hand, as I like to say here, because it's very interesting part that we got smarter, we got more computers, we got more power to do things, but our problems go with it. Our problems are not problems of Adam Smith. Our problems are way, way sophisticated. And the mistakes we make, the cost of each of those mistakes is also 10 times higher. And so the self-interest is one of the most criticized things because, well, yeah, when you need to eat, your self-interest kind of motivates you to do things and find food. But if you have already 20 pairs of shoes and you just care about yourself and you want to buy another 20, that produces a lot of negative externalities for our economy. If you want to drive, again, pickup truck and you don't care about pollution, that and everybody else makes the same decision, we're all going to die pretty soon. That's not very great. And so the cost of mistakes go high. So self-interest is very problematic. And again, as we're going to learn a little later, in a complex system, you have to account what others will do. You cannot just make decisions on your own. If you make and again, if you make a small decision, you go to Costco and you just think about yourself and you make your basket, what you buy, no one gets hurt, mostly, no problem. But if you're deciding on really important social issues that have implications and you make more and more decisions like that, and we have more and more decisions like that, then that's not just not working. And we can see that with pandemic. Pandemic was a great example where self-interest would lead nowhere. You cannot just be a self-interest, even though it it also kind of forced people that are selfish to be more selfish, because it's like danger, right? Danger, you become who you are in reality, and it's like reveals who you are. So selfish people get more selfish, but it also showed like we cannot survive if everyone just would do what they want. It doesn't work. We have to keep interests of other people in mind and come up with some kind of social solution. Any solution, again, whatever you think is right, but it has to be for our country, at least. Better for the world, but at least for a state, didn't work very much because we have borders. But for a country, on a country level, more or less could work. With that virus, we need to get a global solution, but at least national solution, because if everyone's just doing what they want, nothing good would happen. It doesn't work like that. And so our many other economic problems, a bit less than what to do with pandemic, has that idea. So self-interest is not very helpful. It creates a lot of problems, but also it's not true. So that comes from psychology. Psychology says we are not self-interest, just a fact. If you take 1,000 people, 990 of them will have at least somebody else they care as much as they care about themselves. Parents, do you care about your parents, your brothers? Do you care about your city? And so it also self-interest in this setting is quite problematic, because it always self-interest. It's not that you come first. It's more or less nature, right? We can think, well, I want to eat first, or if there is just some extreme situation, I want to be the one to survive. Very few really kind of enlightened people could sacrifice themselves for others. But most people think, well, that's self-interest. But that's not how economics sees that. Economics sees that if you have a choice to take all the wealth in the world for yourself and everybody just kind of dies, you would do that. That's your self-interest. It has no limitations. And it always only you, not you first, only you. And that is absolutely not true. It's like we don't live like that. Even people who would say I'm kind of on a selfish side and I'm not, don't have very good morals, probably not very good to be around. Even they have somebody they care at least a little bit. And most people have, again, here we can bring what a good Christian would do. It's kind of straight there. You have to care about others, actually sort of to care even more about others if they have less. So there are good messages there and against self-interest, but I'm kind of not a preacher to tell you how to live, but I think at some point another way we still need to have some sort of moral that is applicable to everybody. And I saw in some discussions about kind of morality that everyone has their own moral. That's true, and then also not true, because we all think, we had terrible events going on every week. Nobody says that's okay. We all see that that's morally wrong. I don't know, maybe some really mentally challenged people would think that that's okay to just randomly kill somebody, for example, but that's not okay. So when you say, well, we have different morals and so we cannot have policies based on morality, that doesn't make any sense. No, we have we have the same morals. We have, some differences in our morals. That's true too, but the foundation of our morality is actually quite universal. It goes back thousands of years. Like, don't kill random people for no reason. It's quite universally morally unacceptable. Same as don't steal and other things. So being self-interest again doesn't really work very well. It's not true. We are part of our interest is our community, our family, our community, our city, our state, and there is actually, again, from psychology, many interesting research, like how much we care a bit more about our town or our city than neighbor town. We care about more, a little bit more, in one country. But if you are from Michigan, you care a little bit more about Michigan than about Ohio or about California, just a little bit more on average. Maybe you are an exception, but you care a little bit more. And that's already not self-interest, but it's just natural. It's nothing here that is some kind of based on someone's moral. Like, very often I see students kind of afraid that somebody will teach you morality and say, well, that's their morality. No, not really. Like, we are human beings, and there are things that comes with that. And just liking, your tribe more than other things, your family, your bigger tribe. If we had an alien invasion, you probably would like humans as a species more than aliens. It's quite reasonable. So self-interest, a huge problem, one of the most criticized today assumption that our economic system is only based on self-interest. And that's why ABCD, all the problems we have, because we think, going back to optimal and desirable market outcome, we think selfish is great. And lots of problems because of that. Another assumption is that markets are naturally perfectly competitive, which doesn't make any sense, because if you are in the market on the side of producers, as a consumer, you would mostly say, okay, if you are not self-interest, you would prefer a competitive market. If you're self-interest, you prefer to be an exclusive. So you don't want everybody to have the same. So what is competitive market? Let's assume, let's say smartphones, Apple, or whatever smartphone you like. They were perfectly competitive. That's what means is an iPhone, the latest, would cost as its production cost, which is around $350 today. So you could buy iPhone for $350. And then psychology says, how many people wouldn't like that? Because this means that people who now cannot afford it would also be able to buy it. And that type of product is something to show off. And so people would not like that. And so you see, that's because of kind of selfishness. So even these two conflict each other, as psychologists show. But in reality, markets are not perfectly competitive, because as a producer, there is no incentive to be on that market. You will not make any money. Everything, the prices are too low. If you increase the price, that's the meaning of perfect competition. Your competitors will eat you alive, effectively, as a company. So everything is against business in that market. Everything is just for consumers. And that's another. So self-interest is a big, basically, because it worked into the system that we have. And the problems that we have, every time we try to solve it, we see that, well, the self-interest is not a great building block to build our economy on. It just doesn't work. The perfect competition is plain wrong. It doesn't exist. And so when you build on something that doesn't exist, you arrive in other problems that appear because you just imagine something. So perfect competition doesn't exist. Another thing that is possible, but in reality also doesn't exist, is complete information. So you need to know, I think we have some other information. So there is a term, complete information. And this means that you know everything about what? About the product. What means everything? You know all the prices this product is sold in all the places around. So when you go again to Costco and you want to buy coffee, while you're buying this bag of coffee, you know all the prices of all the coffees in this town. You also, so prices, you also know kind of the quantities, but let's assume, at least for simplify, that quantities are available, right? All the coffee that is sold is there. So you don't care about quantity, but you need to know the quality. This complete information means that you know everything about all this, quality of the coffee, but you don't unless you buy it. So you need to sort of buy and taste all coffees in your town to actually obtain that information. And what if it's not a coffee? What if it's student loan? Then it's a pretty problematic. And to obtain that information, because they don't want to tell you, at least coffee producers like to advertise and tell, you can read, tells a lot about their coffee, and still, taste pretty hard to judge without tasting it. We can smell it. Does coffee is still easier than student loans or something that they don't want to disclose that information to you. How are you going to know what's your interest rate? How are you going to know what are the conditions of your repayment? And for your SA2, you will watch a piece on student loans. You will see how much you don't know, how much they don't tell you, because it's a negative information. They don't want you to know, obviously, because it's nothing good there. If with coffee, it's mostly good, that's why you know. But if that coffee has some kind of something that is bad for your health in it, that they won't tell you. So, and then another thing, you need to know utility again. You can be perfect in these calculations. It also, this perfect and complete information implies that you are very good in math, that you'll need even for this course a little bit, but you are so good that you will do the exercise that we are going to do in class. You are doing them in Costco and Walmart. For every product you buy, you are doing a serious math optimization. How much to buy, what the best price, which option is the best. Now, even if you're good in math, like I'm pretty good in math, I don't do that for about 99% of things I buy. I just like it, I buy it. I don't like it, I don't buy it. If it costs like $10 or less, I just don't care. But that means you make non-optimal decisions, because that's not complete information. You just didn't calculate it right. And finally, which is on this level, we don't talk about probabilities. It's a very difficult topic mathematically, but in reality, our economic decisions almost always are not certain. Again, going to Costco and buying groceries, for example, it's the most certain you get. You know how food tastes, you know what you like, you're probably gonna eat this food very fast. So the uncertainty about the future, which is then the kind of the primary driver why we need probability theory and why we have uncertainty. Future, it's unknown. But if you buy something for dinner tonight, you have a little bit of unknown. If you get a student loan to pay for your education, you need to understand what's going to happen in the next 30 years with you, your career, economy, and everything else. That's a lot of uncertainty. And so the probabilities that comes with it, estimation, different options. It's very complicated math, but also it's just difficult. Even if you know math, it's very difficult question. So assuming just like that everybody who makes decision in the economy understand and calculates and do that, it's very naive. So perfect and complete information assumption is just naive. It doesn't exist. It exists. Again, grocery store, it's as much as we get with it about the food, more or less. Again, the food quality is good because the quality of food, and that's going to be SA3, is a big mystery and a problem. So, yeah. Summarize: perfect, complete information. You know everything, and everything is correct too. So that's important. Hardly realistic. Fine, and finally, but another one, non-satiation, or mathematically is monotonicity. So non-satiation means more is always better. And together with self-interest, we have a sort of a moral objection to that, and a psychological objection to it, and even a physical objection, because more is always better, just not true. Let's say again, you start eating and you like apples, candies, you like candies. You eat one, you're happy. You eat two, maybe even more happy because you find the taste, it's amazing. Now you eat 10, you're so full you probably shouldn't eat 10. And the 11th one will not have any positive utility. And so it's going to be zero. You're not going to take it even for free, even if, let's say it's free, you don't take it. And then let's say you took it, and then someone pays you $1 and take 10 more. Would you eat 10 more for $1? Then probably no. So it's negative utility. You're ready to basically reject money not to get that. So more is always better is a stretch. More money is always better, probably. So the economics thinks that everything is sold for money, and more money is always better. And so you can just simply say that more of everything is always better because you can trade it. But in reality, it's not that easy. Everything is not that easy. But mostly the problem comes that with the mindset, because this self-interest and non-satiation is embedded in our society because it was a dominant belief, economic belief, since the 60s until 2008, when it collapsed, and still now very much in place. We just start realizing that this system drives us over the cliff with environment, social problems, and many other problems. It just we kind of start seeing that this mindset is not great, but it's still there. It's very much dominant, and so more is better mostly creates, again, we have 1 billion people, we have great technology that produce a lot of things cheaply. So if we want more and more and more, we now don't use that. We don't eat food we buy, we don't wear clothes we buy, we don't drive cars sometimes we buy. Well, most people don't buy more than one car, but quite often, let's say, get great economic financial example is buying cars and not using that and not really driving them for the length of their life. Almost all my friends change cars. It's like, I don't know, every 5 years at least. Why? Car can drive 20 years. Well, they change because, something. Always find an excuse, but that creates, it creates a lot of financial burden on them because they're not that wealthy as they think they are. But that's what we study in finance class. But in economics and in general, it creates a lot of waste of our resources and a lot of pollution and a lot of other things, and GDP too, in macroeconomics. But Problematic is that the mindset of more is better is just destroying our world as a biosystem. It's biologically very heavy on our Earth. And environmental issues and health issues related to that, and also many things, because again, it's mindset. If more is better and self-interest is involved, then how about to add drugs to food so people got addicted to this type of food? So if there is no moral compass, and that was eliminated from economics, and then there was established is only I matter basically, and more is always better, we created this kind of monster. And that's why we do have that. We do have people who add drugs to food, and not, some random street people. We have corporation, as you're gonna see in your essay 3, that have massive food production that we consume that have those issues. Why? That's why. And so we are, it's a very interesting time in economics. It really is, because we're still living in this world. We're still living in the world where self-interest and non-satiation is a dominant belief. And yet most people today understand that that's kind of a false belief. We need to find something else. We need to care, at least to some extent, not first, not planet first, me first, okay, but planet second. We still need, and we need to understand that, well, I have enough, and maybe I need to be more sustainable. Doesn't mean you need to give away everything, be super generous, which goes being a good Christian. You see how it helps you to become a better economic person too. But I am realistic. I know most people won't do that, but at least you can understand and stop, eating like you never eaten before, and buying insane amount of things that you just don't use. Just buy things that you actually use. Very simple. Even that in today's world is actually would be a great step from where we are, because we spend about half in the United States, especially the United States, because I think other countries either have less resources, so they're more efficient because they just don't have this luxury of buying cheap stuff, or they arrived into some kind of understanding that sustainability is actually exactly opposite to more is better. So what sustainability means? It's just enough is enough, and more is better is kind of opposite to enough is enough in a good setting. Obviously, if you're poor, your opposite is very different. But let's say you're successful, wealthy, living in a good country that allows you all the opportunities, then that's your battle. Either you are enough is enough mindset, and you think, yes, I want this, I want one car, probably an environmentally friendly car, because I want to minimize my impact on the environment. And then I want clothes, good clothes, but only the one that I actually need, and that I wear until it dies, not just I got tired of it and threw it away, and so on. So that is enough. Enough is enough mindset versus more is always better. And that today it's a generational battle. Statistically, young generation is a bit more enough is enough. However, it's still questionable, but statistically, yeah, that is true. And old generation grew up in 70s, 80s, people, that was the dominant mindset. So there's still more is better for them. So that's for you also to think about how it is, and comment in discussion boards, and just think about how to apply it to your own life. And of course, to remember for the test. And another one which we will not talk about this in this course because it's just an introduction. It's called risk aversion, and it has to do with uncertainty and probability. So I just kind of introducing you to another economics that exists on top of this level. And that economics is very similar to this economics, but in that economics, nothing is certain as in the real world. We don't make decisions that easily. Oh, I know this and this would happen, so this one is better than this. No, what's going to be tomorrow? And you have options and risks. And so risk aversion is assumption that we do not like risks. We just don't. We like to pay a little bit money to reduce the risk. And especially, so sometimes we like the risk. Again, input from psychology. So you see economics and psychology today is extremely interconnected. The new economics, because there is like this neoclassical economics and there's new economics, which influenced by psychology quite a lot. And psychology says that it's funny because we like uncertainty when it's not very impactful. And they run a test, for example, flippy coins, the basic probability, the simplest game, right? You have flippy coin, and the game is, let's say if it's heads, I got $1, you pay me $1, and if it tails, I pay you $1. So it's a zero-sum game. It's a fair game, as we call it in probability theory, which means no one is actually expected to cheat and sort of get some power over another. It's a fair as it is, 50% chance for head and tails. If I got head, I give you $1. If the coin got tail, you give me $1. So it's a zero-sum game too. It's like the simplest and very fair game. And we are ready to pay it. So if that's the game, let's say $1, people like it. And in fact, the gambling quite often is gambling. Obviously, as you a little bit business mindset, you need to understand that when you go to casino, that is never this fair game. They play a game where you give them $1 and they give you 10 cents if you win. So odds are very different. Sometimes, 90 cents if the game is very popular, but it's never 1-to-1, because otherwise how are they going to run a business? So you're always at disadvantage. So it's an unfair game. But we still go because we like these games. If there's $1, you would play this game. That's what psychology said. Well, again, assuming you have some kind of income, you're not struggling to get $1. So that's a small amount of money for you. You can live without, let's say, $10. You can play this game. Now, if I offer you the same game, but that's going to be $1,000, you probably will not play. Again, assuming you are not a millionaire. Or $10,000, definitely wouldn't play. Even I wouldn't play for $10,000. Why? The same game, the same odds, the same fair game, same conditions, just the price and the cost are higher. And we turn to what's called this risk aversion. When the cost is too high, we really don't like that, because the thought of losing $10,000 is devastating. We don't care if we win 10,000, even if we win 100,000, even if we win $1 million, we don't care, because there is a 50% chance for us losing $10,000, and it's a lot of money for us, and that will be impactful. And so we just kind of shut down. We are not going to play this game no matter what. And that's risk aversion. That's why our economic system is a lot of very strange. Some people say it's unfair, but it's mostly like why wealthy people can easily make money. It's not that, quite often you might hear, well, the world kind of is fixed for wealthy people. That is, well, partly it's true. I wouldn't say that it's not true. mostly when they write laws for themselves that I don't really like. But as financial investment analyst in the past, I can see how you can make money when you have, let's say, $1 million versus when I don't have $1 million. It's because you can take those games. And in the investment world, it also supply demand. And there is very little supply of money for projects like that. There's a great idea. It could give you 10 times your money. But you need to put $1 million and you have 50% chance of losing it. And people in Silicon Valley, in Wall Street, they would take that chance. That's how they make their fortune. And they lose, and it's not just fixed or something. In the investment world, it's, I would say, rather fair, more or less. You can find a way, but there is this thing that you need money to make money, and you need to be able to lose a lot of money if you actually want to make a lot of money. And that's not an option for 90% of Americans, for example. Just not an option. We cannot lose 100K, for example, and invest in some kind of venture capital portfolio of future Googles or future companies you'd never heard of because they went bankrupt. We cannot do that. People who can will make 10 million out of 1 million on average, but not always. Sometimes they will lose. So it's risk aversion. When the costs are too high, we will lock down, we will never play the game. And it also, so there are many research why it's so hard for, let's say, poor people or below average income people to get out of it. It's kind of like, well, for really poor people, it's pretty much impossible, actually. And that's a scientific fact called poverty trap. So for poor people, it's impossible to get out of poverty without external help because all the time and efforts they spend just to keep being alive, they just don't have time to do anything about it. Because the moment they try, they will die because they need to spend 24/7 just to stay there. Otherwise, they just have no food, no water, no shelter, and they're going to die. And that's unfortunately is a poverty trap. And that's why to solve poverty, you need to help those people. You need to create a path for them because it's impossible. It's not because they don't want, it's just they don't have any time left, any efforts. It's just trap. It is a trap. But for below average income people, they also have a trap. It's just a nicer trap. A trap, 9 to 5 work all the time. You probably know someone from your family who is also like that, who's always working, trying to make a living. And, it doesn't mean they're lazy. It doesn't mean they're not intelligent or smart, or they could be all the greatest qualities. But because they have no resources to take higher risks, it just where they are, and that's where most people, and that's why investment world is very interesting. It's like the higher you go, you have more opportunities, and that's why it's very true that a wealthy person can legally make a lot of money just by taking risk, because it allows, if like Elon Musk, he takes insane risk, like literally insane risk. The odds are about 1 to 50, I think, for SpaceX. Even he, like by his own calculation, it was maybe 1 out of 10 that he would succeed. But why would he do that? Because he can. Because he had already like $100 million from PayPal times, and Tesla is doing well. So why not? He wants to try to go to Mars. He has everything already. So if he loses, it's not like you losing money. Again, assuming you're not a millionaire. If you lose money, you have nothing to eat. If he loses money, he's still a millionaire. He just won't be a billionaire. He'll still have a couple $100 million more than an average American would ever not even ever earn, but actually it's like 100 times more than average American will ever earn. So that's a different mindset, and that's risk aversion. So when we model economic system and markets in reality, it's kind of a little harder level than the simplified reality we study in this course. We need to understand that people will not, when their costs are too high, they will just not do that. They will not do the right thing or the good thing or the optimal thing. They're just too afraid of risks. And that's important to keep in mind for yourself as well. So, rational critique. Rational critique of this setup is about that it doesn't mean that you're necessarily rational. For example, it is rational to change your mind over time if something has changed. So I just told you that, basically one of the definition of irrationality is not being able to change your mind. But when we take that to economics, so, rationality is just a scientific, rather mathematical and logical term. We bring it to economics with an idea that you cannot change your mind. So the critique is that, well, there are kind of rational explanation why you can change your mind that are not the price. So neoclassical economics is all about the pricing and budgeting effectively. So money. But there could be a reasonable reason for you to change your mind that is not price. And that could be rational. So you can expand the sort of number of factors you account for, not just the price and your budget, how much money you have and how much it costs, but have a little larger picture. And then it becomes completely rational. It still will satisfy all the axioms if you just look a little bit wider and take into account a lot of things. So in recent years, we have a lot of these social scandals when we figure out, oh, this person was bad. He was doing a lot of bad things. And now he's in jail. I shouldn't have, let's say, like Harvey Weinstein made movies, and well, they were good movies. We went to watch that movie and we were enjoying it and paying him money indirectly. And then, because we didn't know, now we learned and we changed our mind. And so, like, yeah, the movie is still good, but I'm not going to go there and contribute to that company anymore as an economic agent. I don't want my money there. That is rational, right? It is completely rational if you take into account a larger group of factors and the knowledge that you now obtain. But the way neoclassical system works only about price, right? The price of ticket can change. So you kind of have no freedom to make that decision. And of course, it's also quite rational to care about your family. So self-interest is not rational. And morality, honor, compassion, all those things are quite rational and they're consistent. Remember? Consistency, that's rational. Inconsistent, if you like, today I'm moral, tomorrow I am immoral, well, that's not very rational. And we have what's called behavioral critique of economic rationality of rather this neoclassical setup in particular. And that comes from relatively recent studies, a lot of them psychological studies. So information. Well, one of key economists, Joseph Stiglitz, got his Nobel Prize in economics for the work on asymmetric information, meaning that almost always producers know about their product a lot more than consumers. If you buy a phone, right? You buy a phone, you didn't know it's spying when you bought it. Now we know because journalists, but when we bought it first, when we got like first smartphones, we thought, wow, so cool, cameras. We didn't know it listened to us. We didn't know it recorded our video without our knowledge. They knew, who made those asymmetric information. And again, rational agents, kind of, as we're going to get, companies also rational. In that setting, this would mean they're not going to tell you bad things. Quite obvious, right? If a company sells a product, they will not tell consumers bad things about this product. And so how can you make an optimal decision if you only know the good things about every product? You kind of know half of information. You don't know anything bad about any products. And so going back to what we try to do, we try to create a scientific mathematical model of our market behavior optimization. So we have numbers, prices, quantities. If we put in our head as a calculator or a computer, we can solve it and get the perfect decision for ourselves. We have budget, we have $100, we go to Costco, we check, and we figure out optimal solution. That's what we are doing in this class. But Stiglitz says, well, it's very hard to do if you only know half of information about those products. If you don't know anything bad about any product because you are not told. And that's reality. That's what he got Nobel Prize, obviously not for just saying that, but for collecting data and presenting it. And especially in financial industry, as they learned about loans. Loans are one of the worst in this. Banks and credit unions and all other companies don't just tell anything, or at least they used not to tell even more. Today, because of some regulations that came actually after Stiglitz's work, so we evolve, we try to be better. He published his works, everyone was surprised. Oh my God, banks lie to customers. They say interest rate is 0% APR. Then you go and pay 20% APR, but they didn't tell you. How did that happen? So after his work and after he's quite influential, so political events, after some debates, we change a little bit of regulation, so there's less of that, but it's still there. It's still there are issues in financial industry. There are issues with many products. Many products have secrets because it's quite rational not to tell bad things about your product, right? If your goal, as we're going to learn for a producer, to make money of it, nothing there says you have to tell negative about yourself. Conflict of interest. So that's a problem. Well, people are rarely intelligent enough to calculate their utility, especially the one involving probabilities, a big problem. So all this system, all this efficiency optimization system relies that everybody calculates utility, including under uncertainty, including that I can calculate whether I should take a mortgage loan on my house, assuming all the ABCDs factors that are here around real estate market. I understand the real estate market. I understand my job. I understand whether I'm going to be paid 10 years from now. How stable is my job? All these things I can mathematically optimize in my head or build a program to do that. And then I can make decisions. Psychologists test it? Not at all. People they don't calculate. Even when they buy house and cars, they don't even calculate money. What we can say, they buy clothes, zero, zero intelligence, unfortunately. Like that, people make such decisions that are very, in this setting, that's what we try to do, they're very inefficient. And I think one of the questions is kind of thinking about how you waste money, like what you bought, that if you sit right now, listen about all this rationality and your money, budget efficiency, you think that was a waste of money. And we all done that. Even I done that. I teach that we should all be mindful, and yet I find myself like, why would I buy that? It's like it maybe an emotion in the moment. I was in the moment, it looked nice. I didn't think anything about it. Just bought it. Now I'm thinking I should have thought that I'm not going to use it because I moved somewhere or something happened. and now it's not really there. Like, what was I thinking? I'm pretty sure we all been there. So that's a problem for all the setting because it's a very neat system. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work in a big way. And finally, we can rationalize consumption only of what is called basic needs. But when we go higher in a hierarchy, and that's referred to Maslow hierarchy of needs that we're going to study in one of the next lectures. So our needs, what we want, it's a very neat hierarchy, and it explains what we want and how everything changes. And the basic needs are what we sort of need most and first. Water, shelter, food, clothes, all those things of the basic needs are actually what we buy in stores, and those things we can rationalize the best. Higher needs, it's like, justice and peace in the world, one of the examples of higher need. How you can monetize that, how you can rationalize that, how you can even apply these tools for that particular purpose. But even if you want, let's say, a promotion, it, again, psychologists bring that it's not really a promotion you want. You want respect of your colleagues and peers. That is one of the higher needs, quite popular. How you can rationalize that in this decision making? It's not fitting there. It's very difficult to, even though it's related to work, it's not something very abstract. It's quite practical. I want to get a promotion. Let's say I want to get a promotion, but I need to go and get my MBA for that. Even that decision is, it has money. You have to pay for MBA. It has practical things, but it's quite hard to put a price tag and apply utility to the, well, let's say your promotion is not monetary, because you don't want it for money. You want it for respect of others. You want to be head of department in the company, and the company says you go take MBA. So it gets difficult the farther you move from Costco and Walmart. You leave that, you try to figure out higher level of needs, and it gets tricky and complicated. And that's it. If you have any questions, let me know.